r/ask Reddit. What's the most satisfying act of I don't give a duck that you have ever witnessed? I was in line at a coffee shop and the lady was complaining that they didn't have organic milk, and without a word or hesitation the guy behind the counter just said next please, not even taking her order. My hero. Back when I worked at a movie theater, one of my fellow assistant managers, Jack, had the constant attitude of not giving a duck. He'd worked at the theater longer than anyone and was good friends with the general manager, so he got away with murder. One time this lady wanted a refund for a movie she'd finished watching. She was going crazy, screaming at us about how the movie was so inappropriate to be rated PG-13 and she couldn't stand all the swearing in the movie. I kept calmly trying to explain to her that since the movie was already over we couldn't give her a refund. Our policy clearly stated no refunds after 30 minutes into showtime. She's not hearing it, and looks to Jack now, like he will give her the answer she wants. He starts saying the same thing I did, and she interrupts him again with her yelling about how she couldn't stand all the swearing in the film. Jack rolls his eyes and just says, well, that's just too ducking bad, and walks off. Cue stunned look on my face and the ladies. People who want a refund after watching an entire movie are probably the same people who complain about their food at a restaurant even though they ate every bite. My cashier in Amsterdam was literally just taking my groceries and sliding them across but not scanning them and then putting them into my bag. She scanned the last thing for like €2 and goes, that'll be €2. She did not give even half of one duck. Probably her last day of work. The cashier we all need when grocery shopping. My ex-boss had a customer throw her money on the counter when my boss clearly had her hand already out waiting to be given the money. So when my boss went to give the change, she just threw it back. Coins went everywhere but the look on the lady's face was priceless. Whenever I deal with customers, I just reciprocate what they do. Hand me your money, I hand it back. Put your money on the table, I put it on the table as well. Same. When I worked in customer service this is what I would do mostly cause I hate people I don't know touching me without permission. And if someone doesn't want me touching them I won't do it. Didn't see it, but it was talked about at my old restaurant. My autistic friend was getting an interview for a second restaurant job. The chef doing the interview asked this question and got this response. I could be the biggest a-hole when things get heated. How do you feel about that? Well, if that's the case, then I don't want to work for you. Spoiler alert. Things are always heated and that chef is always an a-hole. Some Karen was beefing about a 25% off coupon. The coupon was for a 42-ounce bottle of something, but she wanted a 28-ounce bottle. The coupon was rejected when scanned, because, duh, there was no product to match it. There was nothing the cashier could do, but Karen just kept demanding 25 cents off. Finally, the guy ahead of me in line marched up to the counter, slapped a quarter down, and said, there's your ducking 25 cents off. Now pay your ducking bill so the rest of us can go on with our days. What a legend. Someone's girlfriend was cussing them out in the middle of a mall. This dude called up his mate and asked to get a ride home and left her speechless. Don't know how that relationship ended up. You probably saw it. In college we had this prof for physics who liked to pick on a few students, basically me and a few others. We had an exam, and he would take off major points over trivial items. Cases where people were getting the correct answers but he didn't agree with our work. Shit like that. And we're talking getting 2/20 on a question, which pretty much ducks you over. After insulting us the prof gets up and solves a problem on the board, and made a trivial mistake. The kind of one that nearly caused us all to fail his class. One of the guys gets up, writes F on the board, flicks him off and walks off. Truly the hero we need. Had a legendary young prof that was getting wind of people sharing information and basically considered it cheating. Went as far as to set a trap, extremely difficult question, and posted the answer on Chegg.com, which is a study help website where everyone pretty much got their answers. Studies caught a lot of people. Like most of the classes he was teaching, which was 3 I think. I wasn't in the class but got it all second hand. NXT day. Walks up to the whiteboard and draws a pyramid with blank spaces. Tells the class to fill in the spaces of who told the other people and walks out. At Costco, this older gentleman was screaming at my boss because apparently all the handicap parking spots were occupied. My boss asked for his information so he could write a complaint. We had little forms for that. Nothing really official, mostly to shut up people. Are you a member? No. Well, that it's then. My boss then put the little form in the garbage can and walked away. The old man was stunned. Was he there for the pharmacy? If so, by law in a lot of states, including mine, Costco has to allow non-members access to the pharmacy. But if the handicap spots are in use by people with handicap plates, what exactly did the guy expect the manager to do? Worked a shitty fast food job when I was 15. Girl I worked with got fired. The manager was a real witch, says to her as she's escorting her out of the building that she needs to return her work shirt cleaned. Girl whipped it right off and threw it at her. Walked out to her car in her black bra and drove off. Damn, I wish I'd got her number. Who returns shirts? My work has it in our contract we have to literally cut them up when we quit if they don't fit anymore. They don't want them, but we can't donate them or throw them out whole. Market of choice makes you pay for your shirt, $28, and when you quit, asks that you donate it back to them. That way they have spares if people need them. Pretty sure they save the tags and just put them back on donated shirts so they get multiple payments out of one shirt. My new shirts had oil stains and the buttonholes were all stretched out. It was me doing it. I worked at a 24-hour restaurant. My shifts mostly were wed. Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. The manager of the restaurant really believed I wanted his job, so he would write me up for the most ridiculous things. One time he wrote me up for a bad review from a customer on a night that I wasn't even working. That one got him in trouble with the regional manager. Moving forward, it was a stupidly busy Saturday night. About 5:45 p.m. I got into work and he met me with yet another write-up. This time for allowing the kitchen to run out of a particular item during my last shift. I didn't even do the orders, but apparently it was my fault. So, I went back to my car, took off my uniform, put on normal clothes I had in there, walked up to the kitchen counter where he was busy with the kitchen staff and some waitresses and waiters. He looked at me, told me what area I would be working that night. I looked him dead in the eye and said I don't think so. He said it again, and again I said I don't think so, this time handing him all of my uniforms. As I turned to walk out of the restaurant, he called out after me, "You can't do this. You are rostered on." I turned, pulled my height and said, "Oh honey, I can." And I just did, as I have been rostered for only 37 hours in total each week for the past 6 weeks. It is deemed I am part-time. As a part-time employee, I am only required to submit my resignation. I am not required to give you any notice. He called me about an hour later and begged me to go back. Yeah, duck you mate. That's not happening. One of my high school teachers was just before retirement. I remember on the day of the final exam he handed out the test papers, then sat down at his desk and read the newspaper, with it open up all the way in front of him. He couldn't see us and vice versa. The smart girl in front finished first and just passed her paper back. It went all around the class. Not the first duck was given by him on that day. When I delivered pizza, we had this older driver, prob in his 20s, who came back from a delivery and was pretty annoyed. A few minutes later the store got a phone call complaining about him. Essentially what happened was, a regular pie delivered was $11.97 and the person handed him $12 and asked for their change. He said okay, went back to his car and got 3 pennies and looked the woman in the eyes and rolled the pennies between her legs into her house and walked back to his car. This hurt as older as 20s now. Work in Geek Squad. Another agent was really upset that day and had a rough patch of a few clients who were really mean and extremely rude to him. After bearing through them and after about a 10-minute break he helped another client. Their first words were alright. Best Buy gave me a shit product that broke after 6 months and I want you to fix it right now, which he explained that there's a process and he couldn't fix it right now and the guy cut him off and said I don't care. Get it done. Well, he sat there for a second quiet, and took off his badge, slapped it on the table, yelled "duck you," then started walking towards the front door with middle fingers up pointing at everyone, then said "and duck this place," and walked out. When I went home and on Steam I saw he bought GTA 5. He then had 200 hours played in 2 weeks after that. Haven't checked since. One casual employee decided to stop using proper radio procedure. Instead of using his correct call sign, he replied on the radio with Super John Smith, not his real name. He kept doing it all night despite dispatchers, supervisors and co-workers telling him to stop. He still works there and has outlasted hundreds of employees. I'd say his work-life balance is pretty good. I still call him Super John to this day. Little bit late, but at Air Force basic training when you first show up you're either in civilian clothes or the uniform with sneakers, because they don't want to duck up your feet I guess, and are affectionately called sneaker weakers. While a chow at the table behind you gets up, you need to get up and leave regardless if you're finished. If 2 tables behind you get up you'll be swarmed by MTIs and have them scream in your face until you do get up. I had just put my tray back and started to walk out when I look back and see one lone sneaker weaker by himself in a row of 5 or 6 tables, surrounded by 6 MTIs. Kid is staring straight ahead and just eating his food 1 spoonful at a time while the MTIs scream in his face. Finishes his food, sets his spoon down, picks up his drink and just slowly finishes his water, turns his glass over, puts it down, picks up his tray and walks up to put it away while still being screamed at by 6 MTIs. Kid is walking out and I realize everyone in the room is staring at him. He has no emotion, no fear, no smirk, nothing as he walks out of the chow hall. In high school I worked as a cashier at a grocery store and one of the front-end supervisors was a woman in her 60s. She was eventually able to retire and on her last day she got to live out the fantasy of every service industry employee, chewing out a rude customer for being an a-hole. It was a truly inspiring moment. I was at a restaurant recently. While I was waiting for my friends to arrive I noticed a couple a few tables away. The lady was going on and on. I couldn't hear the exact words, but it was pretty obvious that they were having a heated argument where she was apparently scolding her so, and the guy was just sitting there having an occasional spoonful of his dessert. Exactly 3 minutes and he just stands up and walks away. He goes out of the restaurant, gets in his car and drives away. I was sitting at a table near the window facing the street, and the woman was in absolute shock. The look on her face was priceless. I mean, I shouldn't judge their relationship without context, but the guy sure didn't give a flying fart about what happened next. Satisfying because it blew up in her face. Lived in a town with a high population of Armenians. Girl posts that she's glad the Armenian genocide happened and is acting like she doesn't care what people are saying when she gets to school. The legit death threats start coming in and her boyfriend has to leave the school from all the harassment. Her family ended up moving because people kept up the onslaught even months later. This girl was an awful person. I was playing paintball in Oklahoma at a D-Day event. A lot of the guys there are vets or currently in. There was a guy that was pissed because he got shot and he confronted the guy that shit him and pulled a knife. Little did he know the guy was SF and he just goes like, "What are you gonna do with that?" The pissed guy tries to stab him and the SF guy proceeded to break his wrist and take his knife like nothing ever happened. Refs watched it happen too. Nobody said anything. I was working a double at a restaurant after closing the night before. The shift started at 10 AM and ended around 11 PM with a 30 minutes break between lunch and dinner service. I was about 5 minutes late and the manager, read owner's errand boy, tells me about half an hour before my lunch break that the owner says I have to stay on my break. Now the owner was real pose. I have stories to tell about that guy. I looked that spineless manager in the face and said, "You can tell owner he can go duck himself." I got fired so fast for that shit and it was way worth it. I was tired of making money for that schmuck. I worked in a hotel that had a full service restaurant with a buffet in the center of it. Minutes before closing up, we had a Karen come in with a friend. She was already pissed and whining because the hotel gave her vouchers for the buffet, but she wanted to order off the menu and didn't like that she'd have to pay for it. She ended up ordering 2 eggs and wanted them poached hard. I bring them out and she immediately stabs the egg and complains that the yolk is too soft. Sends them back. We check and it's a standard hard poach. She just wants them rock hard apparently. I bring out the next set. Same complaint and they're sent back again. Repeat once more. Our cook was an old a-hole that had been working there 30 plus years and very obviously ran out of ducks to give a long time ago. After I brought the last set back, He cursed under his breath and said he'd bring out the last set. He was done and wanted to go home. I go out to clean off some tables and see him storm out with a plate. He goes to the buffet, in full view of Karen, grabs 2 hard-boiled eggs, and walks them to her, throws the plate down without a word and walks back to the kitchen. It took everything I had not to burst out laughing as Karen stares in shock for a few seconds before she starts screeching to our manager. I was at a car race with my mom and grandpa. We sat in our normal seat and this huge family sat directly in front of us. The parents would stand up, in our way, every single time a race started and ended. Usually the most exciting parts. We decided to move, just scooting a few feet to the left cause it wasn't super busy. Also the reason we couldn't figure out why they had to sit right in our way. They all left to get food for like 40 minutes and my mom was already irritated, so when they came back and sat exactly in front of us again, she was furious. They stood up again for the beginning and end of all the races, and on one of the last few my mom had it. She stood up and spoke loudly, not screamed or anything. "Are you stupid?" They turned, stunned for a few seconds, before muttering something about my mom being rude and moving to the complete other side of the seats. We went back to our normal spots and enjoyed the rest of the races. It's now a very funny inside joke between us. Last week I was at a Salvation Army thrift store. I saw this dude walk in without any hesitation or attempt at being sly, took his hoodie off, put on a button up from the rack and walk right out. I went on a trip to Peru, and when we were discussing the itinerary for Machu Picchu, this US lady said she had just had knee surgery and wanted to know about the disability accommodations. At Machu Picchu, disability accommodations. The guide gaped at her for a second, then said you can see it from the bottom and moved on. I loved him immediately. A friend was arguing with her boyfriend. He was demanding her money for some garden stuff he'd bought, when he's been living at her place rent and bills free for a few months now, and it wasn't a one-time suggestion. It was straightforward, serious, demanding all ducking evening we were out, in front of her friends. We're talking like $15 at best here. We were walking from a restaurant to a bar. She got so pissed off that without a word, she stopped at the ATM, withdrew $20 and threw them on the ground in front of him and went home. I worked at a gas station when I was 20. This Karen comes in, and this is before prepaid was mandatory, comes in to pay after she pumped. It came to 32 and change. I tell her and she calls me a retard. She pumped 30. I'm like UHH, well we can't take a look at the pump, but I am pretty sure you were looking at the liters and say we can look at the pump and take the price it says. She keeps screaming at me. My boss comes out, tells me to help the other customers, and then he laser strip into her, tells her to pay the extra $2 and get the duck out and never come back. At this point like 5 or 6 people are just watching this Karen get chewed a new a-hole for a solid 2 minutes. It was awesome. Not super heroic, but it did feel pretty good. I used to never like dancing just because I didn't really know how to dance. I one day decided duck it and just danced with my friends. It was awkward as duck, but it got me down the path to enjoying myself in more social events because I stopped overthinking it. I work at Old Navy in Ohio and we have sales tax, but they don't in Pennsylvania, and this lady from PA was complaining about having to pay sales tax on an exchange, and I told her I can't override state law, and she got more upset, so the lady behind her came up and swiped her card and paid her tax. Then they got in an argument. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.